There seems to be this somewhat simplistic understanding with both leftists and the general public of what participation in capitalism is. And this level of understanding is most popularly portrayed in the dichotomy of two perceived socioeconomic groups, the wagee and the neat. Usually on internet forums, the wagee is miserable and in a cubicle. Meanwhile, as if projecting their own hubris, the neat is seen as superior and free from capitalistic problems since they spend their time at home unemployed. Obviously, as an internet meme, I don't expect the wagee and neat characters to be nuanced. However, memes do affect how we perceive the world and reinforce the assumptions we make in day-to-day life, and in this case, give us an unrealistic idea of what participation in capitalism is. This meme makes the assumption that the workplace and capitalism are the same thing, instead of said workplace simply being a symptom of life under capitalism. And due to lack of this distinction, many who play into the neat meme believe as if they have escaped the problems of the rat race of capitalism due to lumping its symptoms in with the whole. In reality, your participation in capitalism does not start with wage labor or a job. It affects you whether or not you are actively selling your labor in the marketplace. Now, there are a lot of very big and catastrophic examples of this, like climate refugees as a result of capitalist accelerated climate change, but I'm actually going to go in with two examples that are more relatable to the average person listening to this video: how capitalism can affect your social groups, and how capitalism can affect your bodily autonomy. Firstly, let's discuss how capitalism affects your social groups. This phenomenon is most popularly known as the paradox of adulthood. The reason adulthood is a paradox is because while you have more freedoms as an adult, you've also lost access to a lot of the fulfilling things you did when you were younger, such as having more leisure time and your social group being more available because they too possess this childhood amount of free time. Many people are pretty naive about this effect because life starts to feel as if it speeds up when we get older. Days go by faster because we're busier as adults, and each individual year loses meaning since you're not graduating from a grade of a class or switching teachers or that sort of thing. Our perception of time is not grounded in the objective measurement of it, but instead grounded in the subjective things that gave our lives a constant pace. As such, time flies by so quickly that we don't have the mental capacity to realize that the paradox of adulthood has happened until we look at it through the lens of bittersweet nostalgia in hindsight. This is well demonstrated in a somewhat melancholic meme that states, quote, "At some point in your childhood, you and your friends went outside to play together for the last time, and nobody knew it." The problem here is even with this realization, many people seem to assume that adults are just worse at making friends, or that their faculties for sociability somehow degraded with age. However, this is the naivety I was alluding to earlier, and it's the product of American culture forcing people to individually internalize their failures instead of considering systemic issues. Whether employed or unemployed, the rat race of capitalism will steal your friends from you. My personal experience with this is that I had a handful of IRL friends that I'd hang out with or reconnected with, and because I greatly enjoyed these experiences, I wanted to build a lifestyle where I had lots of free time so my schedule could be more open to spend time with them. While I now have a job that allows me plenty of free time throughout the week, by the time I landed it, my friends had already gotten stuck up in jobs, college, or both. I just couldn't have my cake and eat it too. See, this is why thinking on a social level can be more helpful at times than being strictly individualistic. Sure, I feel bad for my friends as individuals since they're suffering from heavy workloads of college and wage labor, but I also feel bad for the people who have social connections with them because it's a friend that's been stolen from them by the system. While we certainly have a lack of third spaces, a space outside of home or work, we also struggle with the ability to have meaningful social interactions outside the realm of childhood, turning our perception of childhood into this magical, fantastical thing that many older people look back at and wish they could revisit because the thought of somehow being able to keep living like that as an adult feels impossible to them. Maybe my experience as an autistic individual makes this easier to realize, and people on subreddits for different parts of the autism spectrum explain autism as being an adult when you're a kid and being a kid when you're an adult. And if anything, this is a fond romanticization of the autistic experience. I certainly grew up as more mature than my peers, and now as a person solidly in adulthood, I like being silly and unashamedly enjoying the passions that I was more reserved about when I was young. For some people, that was comic books, since they felt as if they had to move on from those things to be an adult, and now just embrace it because that's a better way to live their lives. Anyways, this tangent aside, the understanding we lack in regards to the paradox of adulthood is that the real theft of your childhood isn't aging, but capitalism. You don't become less capable of wholesome nostalgic moments due to age. It's because your environment forces you to be a completely different person to survive. And newsflash, having fun, hanging out with friends, and being away from work aren't profitable in this system. Moving on to the second way this system can steal from you outside of the workplace, we get to your bodily autonomy. Even if you're unemployed, you have to keep yourself employable. to groom yourself for a future employer. I know many an average American love to make fun of countries like North Korea because of their 20 government-approved hairstyles or the Middle East for hijab laws, but if we're being completely realistic for a second, there's a lot of ways you're forced to dress or things you cannot do with your body so you can still have a job in America. Sure, these things aren't laws, but you're still forced to do these things to have a job, which you need to survive. Last time I checked, having piercings, messy or colored hair, or tattoos keeps you from being employed. None of these things actually affect your ability to do the job well, but corporations love to exercise their control over every facet of our lives, and chances are, most people are following these capitalist dress codes even if unemployed because they will eventually need a job. I genuinely know people who are afraid to try new hairstyles because they're worried that their boss might give them crap for it. This is a dumb system. When North Korea tells people that they can only have a certain hairstyle, that's authoritarian. But when corporations tell people to do the same, somehow we let them off the hook? And while I could keep harping on North Korea, let's bring up another country that does something Americans criticize: China. Plenty of Americans love to joke about how you can't post certain things critical of the government in China. However, is that really any different with corporations and social media here? You usually will get fired if you so much as vent about the place you work at on social media, and hell, as a kid, I was always told to be very careful about what I post on social media because a corporation might check it and not want to hire me. Again, like with the haircuts, how is this excusable suddenly when a corporation does the same authoritarian things that we criticize dictators in Eastern countries for doing? All of these things affect you, even if you're unemployed. Maybe you will have a lot of free time, but the system will steal your friend's time, and now you don't have people to spend that extra time with. Sure, the government won't tell you that you have to have your hair a certain way or not to say certain things on social media, but a corporation will force you into those lines of behavior, unemployed or not. So, no, these problems don't go away with unemployment. Capitalism is omnipresent enough to find ways to still thieve you even if you don't currently work for them. The state in countries like China and North Korea force the citizenry to groom themselves for the sake of their dictators, and Western countries, the likes of America, force their citizenry to groom themselves for corporations. And as an anarchist, I find both of these things to be complete bullshit.